was wondering what music was playing.
Yeah, I thought it was like the TV upstairs. Welcome to The Wardrobe. This is the Who You Know podcast. I'm Rylan Deemer.
And I'm Elisa Wilde.
And we've got an exciting episode for you today. We have a very special guest with us, Angella Kirabo. Did I get that right?
Perfect.
Ooh,
Yeah.
so good.
I was holding my breath there. Go either way.
Yeah, and we've really been looking forward to this episode.
Yeah, I've been bugging her about it for a while, but she wanted a formal invitation, but I still didn't even give her a formal invitation. But she came anyway.
Yeah, should we have mailed you something?
Yeah, I wanted a letter, a stamp, you have cordially invited to the podcast,
Maybe afterwards we'll send you a cordial thank you note.
I'll take a gift card too.
Oh, yeah. To Hoo Ha?
I'm not particular,
Starbucks.
yeah. Hoo Ha, the gift card, that would be perfect.
But yeah, we're really happy to have you on the show today. Elisa was saying earlier that you have managed to become really involved with the community in this place that we all live, even during the pandemic times. And I moved here shortly before the pandemic. So for me, it's been kind of a struggle to get involved. So I thought it'd be fun and maybe useful for me if we have a conversation about how you built up your own connections and activities, even during this time where that's not as easy to do.
Yeah. For me, it was, I think when I landed in Cornfield, Midwest, it was, I think there's obviously that fear of I don't know anybody here. But I think at the job where we work, I got a mentor and it was okay, just go out and meet people. And I'm also not I'm a part of a church out here, and they're very heavily involved in the community. So it was easy for me to kind of be okay, I can come out and do stuff with people. And a lot of people in my church are involved in the North area. So it's really cool to just go out there and just serve and just hang out with those people. And I think it feels less involved because I enjoy it. That makes sense. If I didn't enjoy it, I'd be I'm just going to go home and take a nap. But it's fun. It's fun because it's not stuff I wouldn't do otherwise. It's just I'm not an organizer. But if you tell me to show up, I'll show up. You know
Sure.
what I mean? So it's one of the benefits I've had being a part of that church community. So it's been awesome.
Is it other adults that go out with you? Or?
Yeah. It's a pretty small church, all things considered, but I would say we have a young professionals ministry, which is people under the age of 35 and out of college, or anyone with a full-time job or a job period. And we just do life together. We tried our best to do life together. And when I first, I'm not going to lie, when I first moved here, there was community stuff. Oh, we're going downtown to do something. And I'll be no, I don't let's go downtown and clean and pick up the trash. I'm this is not my strength. And I was okay with that. I think I became okay with that. Okay, this is not what I enjoy doing. But then I had to find I enjoy encouraging people. I enjoy being around people. I'm okay, if I think about it in that perspective, well, I'm not going to go clean. It's not, I feel I'm okay. And I can admit this now. I'm okay with saying I don't enjoy certain things, like babysitting babies. Not really so much. Teenagers I can hang with, but screaming babies, I'm give me a second, So I had to figure out what is something I enjoy, what do I enjoy, and how can I find it in whatever we're doing. So if we're doing a pickup, or if we're just hanging out and just jamming out with music, it's okay, what am I enjoying in this? Can I find it? And then that would motivate me to go and show up. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because the reason I thought it seemed like you were so involved because you are usually have plans doing something often, and I'm I almost feel I don't have those plans even as much. Maybe I do and I don't realize it, because if someone asked me to do something when I'm busy, I would. But I don't know, I was just surprised that someone, who moved during a time where we were all locked up could get out and do things.
I think for context, Alyssa just asked me to play volleyball almost every Wednesday. And every single time I'm like, I can't. I have something. So it makes me look busy. But if you ask me like on a Monday, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm available. I think it's just you always pick the day where I'm like, oh no, someone just asked me to dinner or something. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Or even like this weekend, it was like, oh, not till 5, or like, oh, not till this time. And I'm like, oh, okay, like it's just impressive. Yeah.
It was just, you picked, if you had picked next weekend, I would anytime. Like all day. I'm napping all day, but I think this weekend was just, it's one of those where it's like there's this facade of like I'm busy, but I'm like, no, it's coincidentally. I think there's something in your conscious like Angela's busy. Let me ask her if she wants to do stuff. On the busiest days of her life.
I'm really good at planning that.
You do like service for the community through your church, and you mentioned like picking up trash downtown.
Yeah, so that's something we did. I don't think we've not done that in a minute. So I think a recent thing we did was like a coat. I forget what the name was, but like basically we asked people to bring in coats and jackets, and we just put them outside of the church building, and we just went around the neighborhood, like sent people out around the neighborhood to just knock on doors and be like, hey, if you need
like during
a
the
jacket,
winter,
yeah. And also I feel like it's like where we live, the weather is just indecisive. So like you need a jacket every single time. So it was just like perfect. It was like, oh, it doesn't feel, because I think there's like an awkwardness sometimes when you're like giving stuff away, because it's like you don't want to take people's dignity away from them. You don't want to feel like this handout, but it's like, oh, we just have these jackets out there. Like just go find. So it feels more like cool. It's kind of like I was walking by and I saw a nice jacket, like what's that, a yard sale, but except it's free,
Yeah.
And it just feels a lot cooler. But yeah, I would say that's my involvement. It's not like I'm seeking these things. I was like, okay, this is how we serve in the church. But a lot of it is just something that's being organized. It's like, hey, we need people to show up. And I'm like, cool, I can do that. If you ask me to organize, I'm like, this might never happen.
I was gonna say, have you identified like any other areas that you think our communities here need help?
Yes, and I want to say this name, but I don't know if it's just specific to this cornfield area. It's like a center for women that have had like some sort of trauma. And I've been invited, not had a chance to go yet, but there's always flyers around town where it's like they're helping women that have either been sold and were able to escape, or people that have been in abusive relationships. And that's like unreal, because I think,
by sold, you mean like trafficking?
Yeah, trafficking, yeah. Okay. Or have come from these unhealthy environments, and just helps them sort of get back to reality. And I think the first time someone asked me was like, oh, I was like, I have a guy friend, I'm like, can he come? I was like, no, we just need women, because we're not trying to overwhelm them with like the male dynamic. Yeah. And that was super surprising to me. I'm like, that's really cool that you're like, hey, we need to create a safe space, and it's not personal, but we just need females at this point in time. So that's another, I guess, community that I'm super excited to get involved in at some point.
Yeah, what kind of involvement does it entail?
So for me, they were just asking me to come play music and just do music with them. Cool. But there is volunteer opportunities where it's like you can just go read books with them and just hang out with them and just give them this, not to forget their trauma, because that's not the intention, but to just give them this space of like, okay, there is life after whatever the experience is,
Yeah, I wonder, so like when I played volleyball growing up, we would travel, stay in hotels, and every hotel trip we'd bring back all of the toiletries that we didn't use, like the shampoos and conditioners and bar soaps. And they would always go to a place, and I never knew what it was called, and I'm wondering if it's this place, because they always described it to us as women who are like getting back from like domestic abuse and domestic violence. So
it probably was, yeah, because and I think they take donations all year round. So it's like, if like we have like, does anyone have an extra, shampoo, whatever, it's like donate that. And it's because it's like, I think for me, it's something I don't think about. Like when I need shampoo, I go to the store and buy some shampoo. You know what I mean? But it's like, oh, this is something that's necessary for people, or that is a necessity. So I guess, yeah. So it's just one of those other opportunities that I'm excited to kind of get involved in eventually. I feel like this makes me sound like I'm involved in the community, which is subjective, but amen.
My other question that I was going to ask is, what is your favorite part about participating in activities like with the community?
Hanging out with people. I think you learn a lot about, I think it's it's memory making, a lot of memory making of like, oh, we did that, we had that experience, and it's really just hanging out with people. I think I just get to meet people. I'd like to say I'm an extrovert, but I've realized that I also burn out sometimes. So it's just nice to have those moments where like, okay, I'm gonna go out and just hang out with people. Like no expectations. There's nothing required of me but just to show up, which is less, like it's less tasking on the mind. Yeah, I just have to show up for you. So,
do you have a favorite memory that stands out so far?
I would say we did some work with the teens, and I just told you guys I don't do well with like little kids. Not that I love kids, but I really do. But it's like when they start screaming, I panic a little, and I'm like, I don't know, like, is the child broken? Like, I'm with the parent, you know what I mean? But with the teens, there was like this. It was like it was last summer, and we went out to a farm, and we just did like teen stuff, and it was nice because I'm older, and I'm just like I don't want to hang out with the teens. But it was really nice because they did like water balloon fights, and it was just nice to like coordinate that for them and be like, oh my God, I was once a teenager, and this would have been nice to have this space. So that's, I think, a fond memory of mine right now.
Cool.
And I'm like, they're probably building fond memories like through those activities as well. So.
Oh yeah. What about you guys? Do you get to go out in this city in the corn and just...
I like how that's how you've landed on describing where we live. Corn City.
Because really, it could be anywhere in the Midwest.
Yeah,
that's corn. So
a lot of people would argue.
I get out. I don't know. Not as often as what I think I would like, or as often as what I was used to like pre-pandemic. I think it's also like harder to do that here, and I'm definitely one of those people where like the bigger the barrier to entry to do something, the less likely I am to go do it, even if it's like a fun thing. So like the fact that I have to drive to go pretty much anywhere here holds me back a lot of times from just like going out and casually having fun or doing something kind of spontaneous. Like if we had good public transit here, I'd be like out all the time because that's what I did in Chicago. I would just walk somewhere or take the bus somewhere, and that just gave me easy access to the entire city. So I think that's something that I would really like to see developed in Corn City for my own selfish reasons. Like I want to just be out more, meeting people, making new friends, and learning more about the community. But also it would just be better for the people here, like to have access to that. Like a lot of people either can't afford a car, or like they might have like one car for their household, which is like the case with us too. And I think just having public transit makes living in a city so much easier.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I would use it if it was more popularized. Even too, because it's like for me right now, it's like I could take the bus, but first of all, it's a hassle if I have to wait a half hour before it comes, and then I don't know if I'll get back in time for what I want, and so I just end up driving everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, before I moved like to Corn City, I feel like I was on the phone and like I was like, should I bring my car? Like when I was coming for the internship, but like yeah, because people that ride the bus in Corn City are probably like have lost their license, so it just felt like taking the bus in this city is just like, oh no, what are you doing? Like,
I think
why?
It's interesting they described it that way too.
Yeah.
I drove from California to here, and I was like, okay, I guess we're just gonna have to drive in the city, and yeah, it's night and day. Because I think where I lived in LA, the bus would come every 15 minutes. To now, here it's like maybe an hour. I think I've only seen like maybe it's not as common to see. It's been nicer like on the main street that divides the city, but
that's
like
the only one that you can like guarantee is one street.
Yeah,
bus runs on. Yeah, I'm just surprised they said it like that. But anyway,
and this is before I get here, so it's like I'm like, what kind of city is this? Yeah, where am I going?
Yeah, that's an interesting characterization. Although I guess I'm not surprised that people lose their license here because the drivers here. Terrible.
That's what people say, and I'm always defensive of it, but it's probably because I grew up here.
It's horrible.
It's true. It's really bad.
They drive like you're supposed to read their minds. like they just get in front of you and you're like, okay, at what point was I supposed to know? You know what I mean?
I also read something
Caught up
recently
with
that
it.
said that this city is consistently ranked as one of the worst driver
It's
cities.
based on
so-
tickets, accidents. I can't remember what else because I know it's always at the top.
I just feel like here, I've only noticed the police at the end of the month. And I'm like, y'all was trying to hit a quota.
That's what people say. Yeah.
I promise, like, I was like, I'm always, my best driving happens at the end of the month. Like, at the end of the month, I'm like, speed limits. I'm like, okay, we're not getting a ticket.
Blinkers.
Then the minute
yeah.
the first hits, I'm like, okay, I relax, no more tension. It's like, not that I'm a horrible driver, but it's like less, 10 and 2. I'm like, okay, where are the cops? Because I think it's a weird thing that only in this city do the police show up at the end of the month. Like, okay, you're going to get a ticket.
I've seen that elsewhere too, but yeah, the point stands.
Yep.
Let's talk a bit about music. So, as I understand it, you play guitar, right?
Yes.
And also sing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what kind of guitar do you play? Is this like acoustic or electric?
I play the acoustic, and I just started picking up the electric because I saw somebody play, and I was like, okay, I guess this is where we're going. Like, the style of what I eventually would like to be is like, I'm never going to be a Jimi Hendrix or a Clapton,
Okay.
but it would be nice
Yeah.
to just be like, oh yeah, I can hang out with them for like 2 minutes.
Playing some solos.
Yeah.
Cool.
And just be like, hey, this is my 2 minutes and I'm done.
And you mentioned music related to like your church outreach. Do you play then with the church?
Yes, I'm part of the worship band
Okay.
at church, and you guys should come out sometime. Shameless plug.
Sure.
But so I do play with them, and it's awesome. I think for me, music has always been okay. So I'm self-taught, which means there's like the laws of music that I do not obey, right? Like, it has to be this perfect sound, and it has to be. I'm like, no, have fun.
Yeah.
So, and I take that with me anytime I'm playing music. I'm like, I just want to have fun, and it's like, and I want the people listening to my music to have fun too. So I feel like, I don't want their ears to bleed either, So it has to be like carry the note, but I just try to make sure I'm having fun. So even at church, it's like, yeah, I'm worshiping, but it's like I want to worship with fun. I don't want this to feel like a task. I just want it to be like, okay, we're worshiping. Let's have fun. Let's jam out and keep it pushing. So it's been awesome.
So being self-taught then, I know for worship you're playing a lot of songs that other people have written, but do you also write a lot of your own music?
I do. The first real song I wrote was about peanuts.
Oh,
And it's,
you got to tell me the creative inspiration for that one.
My friend, one of my close friends in college, finished my snacks, and it was the end of the semester. When it's like you're broke, and it's like you just can't wait for a break so you can go home and just rehabilitate.
Yeah.
And he like came in and finished my snacks, and I picked up my guitar and I was just like messing with him, and I just started saying, "I love nuts, peanuts." So I had like the melody down, and I was like, okay, this has to be a song now. So I was like, it would be funny if I wrote the song and it sounded like a love story. So like the first half of the song sounds like I'm like telling this guy like, oh my goodness, I love you. And then it goes into I love nuts. And it's like, oh my, and then you like listen to the song again and you're like, yeah, she was actually talking about a snack this entire time.
Yeah.
And it was actual nuts. So
Have you, okay, because I know you have the like Instagram page of just you singing or playing the guitar. Have you sang that on there? And I haven't seen it?
I've not.
Okay.
I've sang it on my personal one. It's on there somewhere where I'm like in a black hoodie.
Okay, I'll look after this.
And it's such a silly song. So in LA, I used to go play at coffee shops. And one time because I used to play like, I think with performing is like, you want to make sure people are involved. So I always try to make sure I perform songs that people know. I don't know what was going on in my head. I was like, you know what? I'm going to perform an original song. And you could tell people like, it's like a pretty catchy song. Like the lyrics are pretty catchy. And then like everyone is like intrigued of like, what story is she telling? Then at the climax, I'm like, I love nuts. And you could see their faces go like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? It's like,
That's gonna be
like this, like, oh no, stay. And then it's like, I love nuts. And it's like, oh, you just built me up just to like tell me this is all about snacks. So
okay, but you saying you performed in coffee shops, like what was your motivation to do that?
I really wanted to do music.
Okay.
I still do. I think okay. answer your question. The motivation was I really wanted to do music. That was a career I wanted to have. I wanted to pursue. I do have like, obviously I do math and I love it, but like I wanted to be a musician growing up. I just wanted to, I felt like it was low stress. And I felt like, okay, this is where I could make an impact. And I didn't want to, it wasn't about, I always used to say like, if I made $10,000 a year, but I got to do music, I would be content. Yeah. And I don't think I've ever said that about any other profession. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was the motivation. I was like, let me just get myself out there and maybe get discovered, you know?
Yeah.
Especially in LA.
Yeah. And I actually went to a coffee shop and it was, I have those moments where I'm like, okay, I'm feeling it. And I was feeling it. And the guy that owned the coffee shop was like, hey, I want you to come back. And he got my number and he was like, every time there's an open mic, I'm going to call you. But then, you know, I had bills and this was like free. And I'm like, okay, I can't go every single time. Yeah. So that's a dream. It's not a dead dream, but it's like, it's an adjusted dream now.
So like, I know you went to school out in LA, but was there a reason why that was the city you wanted to be in?
No.
At that time, okay.
No, my family lived there. So when we moved from Africa, we moved to California and then I went to the East Coast. So when I didn't get a job straight out of college, kids, when you go to college, you're not guaranteed a job. Don't listen to this podcast. And I wasn't because I didn't pick this career. I think I'd only had one exam by the time I graduated.
Okay.
So are we allowed to talk about what we do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we just try to avoid it because it's boring to most of the audience.
But yeah, we're in the actuarial field. I had one exam, so I failed to get a job. And where I went to college was insurance capital. I went to Hartford. So it was like, okay, this is not going to work out. So I went home, you know.
Oh, you went to the, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so I went home and I was like, okay, I'm home. And now I have the degree. And my mom and dad had this deal. And the reason I say this, I'm an adult, guys, but I'm also African. So like, sometimes our parents have influence on us.
Sure.
And so we had this deal where it's like, when you get your bachelor's degree, then you can like play around. I was like, cool, I have my bachelor's degree now. Now I want to do music. And it was like, okay, let's pursue this. But then I had to pay the bills. So it was like, okay, I can't really realistically pursue this and also like afford to live in LA. So when something I had to give. And I took the second exam and here we are.
This is the pathway.
So I find myself curious then about that cultural difference that you mentioned where like parents still have influence even in adulthood. Does that change at some point or is that kind of like a lifelong, like the family's always connected in that way?
It changes in marriage.
Okay.
And for the men, so I come from a tribe where it's patriarchal, so it's like the men have this elevation a little bit. So for the boys, or for my brothers, like when they got older, it's like, okay, you can go out on your own. And once you get married, it's like that influence is not there anymore. However, there is like still some influence that the mother has on the son, right? Because it's, think about like any dynamic, the mother-son dynamic. So there is, in my tribe, there's this thing where it's like, if the husband is not listening to his wife, the leverage point is go to his mother.
Oh, I like that.
And it's, and it's like, go. And this, I just found this out over the holidays because my brother was telling me this. I was like, oh, that's insane. Because, so like, if there is like a beef happening and there is like, okay, he's not listening to me, then it's like, cool, let's go talk to his mother. And he pulls him back into the fold and is like, okay, what are you doing? You are the man. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like influence, but more like wake up.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But for the girls, the influence is not there as much once you get married, because then you're married into this new family and there is like the husband that you're serving and whatnot. But there is still that respect you give to your parents. So it's not like there is that influence, but there is that influence though. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like they can tell me where I can go on vacation and whatnot, but there is that like their opinion matters. And for the men, actually, my mom has named all my brothers, for all three brothers, all their kids, my mom has given them their last name because it's cultural. So like my husband, my sisters-in-law don't really get a choice on that. It's a cultural thing. Like the mother of the man of the house gets to pick the last name of all the kids. So there's that influence in that way. But other than that, you still have your independence, but there's just this kind of don't want to let your parents down.
Yeah.
Kind of energy. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely different than here in the States, where so much of the culture is around like individualism and being your own person, kind of disconnected from your family, like once you become an adult, or at least that's kind of the experience that I've had of it.
Yeah. I feel like once I was able to like financially be on my own, I'm like, I can do whatever I want now.
So yeah, I think when I moved here, it was weird because it's like you turn 18 and it's like you're done. And like for us, I wish I could have said that at 18. Like, oh yeah, I'm 18 now. I'm an adult. I'm done. It's like, no, you're still a child in this household. So
I do wonder though how much we'll see like a shift, because a lot of young people nowadays, they're staying home with their parents for longer and longer, as housing becomes like less affordable, and people want to like save up before actually leaving the house. So people will be home for years after they become 18. So I wonder if we'll see some kind of cultural shift there, with parents still having some influence through adulthood, because they get used to it through like the shared living situation.
I would hope so. I think sometimes parental influence is looked at as a bad thing. I think when you're a child, it's like, oh my God, you're telling me what to do. And I think for me, like there was a shift that happened. There's a shift that happens where it's like your parents realize we've raised an adult and they're grown now, and they give you advice, and I'm not expected to take it. Like my mom, when she tells me stuff, like I'm not expected to take it. But there's just like, okay, but if you make your own decisions, there's going to be an I told you so at the end of it. You know what I mean? If things don't work out. So I hope there is that shift that happens where it's like, okay, it should be okay for you to live with your parents if you're not in a space to financially afford it, and not be shamed for it. Because I feel like it's in like, and I've only experienced this in American culture where it's like, oh, if you live with your parents and you're like 20 and a man, it's like, you're a scrub. And I'm like, no, like the economy is horrible right now. So they should stay with their parents and save up some money. So hopefully that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope so too. We wanted to also talk with you about relationships and how relationships can shape us as people, how trauma related to relationships can shape us as people. You said this is something that you wanted to talk about.
That you like to talk about.
I like to talk about this, yeah. And the reason why is because I think, and also for me, this came out of cancel culture. And also, it's like...
Came out of what?
Cancel culture. Cancel? Where it's like, you're canceled because you said this or did this. Yeah. And I think, like, for example, we kind of talked about Johnny Depp, and I didn't really watch the court case, but like, I think when you would update in the group chat, I'd be like, okay, this is what's happening in this. But it's like, I think when we're talking about like relationships, even not outside of just dating, like interactions with people, like there's people that you meet and you're like, I don't know if you met those people and you're like, I just can't do it with this person. Like you had one interaction with them and you're like, okay, you've peaked with them. Like I've had my one dose of you and I'm done. Like, you know what I mean? And like
so is this, I'm trying to understand exactly what you're talking about. So is this like when you meet someone and their personality is just like,
it's just not,
it doesn't work for you.
There's a clash.
And you're like, I don't want to get to know you at all.
Yeah, it's not even that I don't want to. And that's I think where there's like, I don't want to use trauma because I feel like that's just thrown around. I don't want to throw that around. But there's something where it's like for you, it's like there's something about this personality that I don't want to deal with, and it could not even be. It's not even about that person per se. It's not about the individual you've met. It's something in their mannerisms that you're like, I will not put myself in this situation again. You know what I mean? And it doesn't happen often for me, but like I've had moments where it's like I meet somebody and I'm like, okay, I've just had my one dose of you, and that's okay. But I'm not going to put myself in the situation again. You know what I mean? Where it's
I also don't have that happen often. So I'm going to describe something, and I want you to let me know if I'm on the same wavelength as what you're describing. Sometimes I'll meet someone, and it must be some collection of mannerisms or like, I don't know, their eye contact, like something. And I'll get this feeling like, kind of like they are like empty or something. Like something's off, and it makes me feel like I need to not spend time with this person. but it's not like they annoyed me or did something that makes me feel uneasy about them. It's just like, it must be like a mannerism thing or something that just like it flips some switch inside of me and I'm like, okay, I can't be around this person. Is that what you're describing, or is it something else?
It's something like that. Yeah,
Okay.
and it's not like this person. It's like not like they irk you or something. It's just like you're not my flavor.
Sure.
You know
okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And you're just like, I am not going to do this. You know what I mean? And I think for me, why I want to understand that, because it's like sometimes I meet people and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I've met people and I'm like, I want to be friends with you. You're awesome. But then there's sometimes I meet people and I feel an indifference. It's not like I don't want to be friends with you. I want to be friends with you. It's like, cool. Like, you know what I mean? But then I'm like, once in a while I meet someone and I'm like, okay, I can't do this. You know what I mean? I don't know hard feelings, but it's like, okay, you just do you. And I'm just gonna go do me.
And this is a negative feeling, not a neutral feeling.
Yeah, it's not like it's like not a negative, but it's exhaustive. Where it's like you feel exhausted. It's like okay, I need to go recharge after hanging. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, I can't. What was I gonna say? I'm wondering if like it's almost you consciously making that decision too, because like I feel like there's sometimes where I've had weird interactions with people or it just feels weird, but if they for some reason had an opportunity for a second interaction, I can't think of an example right now, but I'm just like, I'd probably like try it again and see what happens, and I just can't say like no to something like that, or like even if it bothers me, I don't know. I'm wondering if there's
Yeah, but it's like there's something there, right? It's like it's like you meet somebody and you're like, oh man, I just don't want to be around you anymore. And it's like they've done nothing to you. They've just been themselves. And it's like, okay, where's that coming from? Because I feel like for me, I've had to realize that has nothing to do with that person. There's something within me that is like not okay. And you know what I mean? There's like, what is it about me that's like just looking at this person and just saying like, I just can't do this. You know, I don't want to. And I don't think that's fair to the person either, because it's like, I don't know if this has only happened to me, but I've met for like 3 different times in my life where I've met somebody and then they remind me of somebody else. And it's like, you behave exactly like this person. So in my mind, I'm like, I will not deal with you because I'm looking at your personality and I'm like, this is the same thing. I know how this ends. So we're not even going to be friends at this point. So just keep it pushing. You know what I mean? And just getting to that point of like, okay, that's what that is. But yeah, but when I was talking about the relationship and trauma, it's just like, I don't know how to bring it up because I don't have it in my mind right now, but it's like how we behave as people, you know? I think there's people that are bubbly. Like sometimes I'm bubbly and I'm all over the place, but then there's times when I'm, believe it or not, just want to be alone. And you know what I mean? And it's like, I have people that think I'm an introvert and I have people that think I'm an extrovert. I am the same person, but it's just different environments. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, what causes that in me? You know, and what causes that for everyone around me? Because there's people that are like, oh yeah, I'm an introvert until you get to know me. It's like, no, it's because you're comfortable.
Yeah.
That then you're like an extrovert. Yes. It's like, no, so there's not been spaces for you in the world that we live in to be comfortable all the time. But once you get comfortable, then
I agree with that.
You know?
Yeah, like when I let my hair down. For the audio listeners, I'm bald.
Yeah, but I mean, I do have a question for you guys, like, because I think all 3 of us are in 3 different stages of life. Rylan is married. Yeah. You're dating, and I'm single, and we have different perspectives. So I guess for you, Rylan, I guess my question would be like, what has marriage been like as being married now versus what it was like being in a relationship pre-marriage and versus being in a marriage? Like, what has changed in your dynamic with your wife?
I'm tempted to say nothing, but let me think about this for a second. So, I mean, I would say our relationship has changed over time, you know, as we've gotten to know each other better, which never really ends. So, like, as we've gotten to know each other better and kind of, like, figure things out about each other, and also as we, like, cross into, like, other stages of life, like home ownership, for instance, you know, our relationship changes. But I don't think marriage itself like having that marriage certificate, I don't think that has changed anything. Like
Okay.
it wasn't like there was any kind of transition after that where suddenly things were very different. And I think that's a good thing, right? Like we were already, on the same wavelength about like, what we expect out of a relationship, what we expect from each other, how we want to support each other, ways that we show love. We kind of had an understanding of that, before we were married, and we've had improved understandings over time, but that would have happened even if we had, kept dating.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I would say I don't think there's any grand shift from actually getting married, but I think it's more like we've maintained that mindset of like living in this loving relationship together, sometimes working on improving the relationship, sometimes just relaxing in the relationship, and I think that's cool.
Yeah, I've had interaction with him when I watched the last episode of that show, and like one of the things his wife calls him is love.
Wait,
Right?
what show?
What was the show with the Moon Knight?
Oh, yeah.
He was like, "Oh, hey, love, like, would you pass it?" I'm like, "Wow, they're married and they're still having," you know what I mean? Because I feel like sometimes it's like, "Oh, you're married, you won." Like, it's endgame now. It's. So I'm more curious when I meet married people. Like, is it what you thought it would be? You know what I mean? Because I think I have my perception of what my marriage would look like.
Mm-hmm.
But is it like, once I get there, is it going to be what I think it's going to be, or should I just right now start resetting what the idea should be?
Yeah, I don't think it's an end game. I think the game continues. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of like dating though, is like, is this forming into what I thought a marriage would look like too? Because like that's kind of when you date someone, like if I feel like if you're dating someone and you don't think you're gonna marry them, I don't know, maybe there is a point to dating. I don't know. I guess I kind of take that back because like some people do enjoy just dating people, and that's the way they like to live their life and not get married. Because for some people, maybe like it is no different. They're like, why am I getting married versus just dating? I don't know. It's hard to say, but for me, from my perspective, I feel like I'm not going to date someone if I don't think I can marry them. But then hopefully that same, like fun and stuff I enjoyed while dating turns into marriage. And of course, I feel like kind of like Rylan said, there's like life steps that change your perspective, or like stuff you go through. Kind of like you said, home ownership. Or like even for Dan and I, when we moved in together, it just like changes the relationship a little bit. But you like, yeah, you see the differences and hopefully you work through them. Yeah. I feel like you might work through troubles differently while dating versus like married though too. Because like sometimes if you had like a really bad argument, don't agree with something while you're dating, I feel like you could just cut it off and be like, see ya. And then it's like the end of it. But like in a marriage, maybe you try to work through it more.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I don't know how often I have arguments or fights that reach the point of just being like, all right, it's time to cut it off. Or how often I've had those, I should say.
Yeah. But have you had them while dating? Because then, yeah, that's why I'm thinking, like, maybe the dating helps you, like, be like, okay, this isn't a good fit for the long haul.
So, in my past relationships, it's never been like, well, I shouldn't say never. I'd have to think back. I don't immediately recall any that like dissolved from a blow up fight or anything like that. It's more like it's just not the right fit. Let's talk about that and decide to end it. And I also have a relationship that comes to mind where we knew that we weren't going to get married because like I want kids someday, she didn't, and that's really important to me, and we were both upfront about that. But we dated for a couple of years, knowing that it didn't have a next step.
Interesting, yeah.
So was there hope for you that like maybe she'll change her mind? Like
no,
it was just like, I enjoy your company. so I'm going to pursue this.
No,
Like
it was a
life partner.
yeah, it was a good, healthy relationship, and we helped each other survive some situations that were kind of around us, and we also helped each other like grow as people, and it was one of my better relationships, and I really, I think fondly on that time. So I think there can definitely be like a relationship that doesn't, because I've experienced it, that doesn't have that next step, but can still be a really good, fulfilling experience.
So, do you look forward to marriage?
I do. I would say I did not look forward to marriage until like last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh.
it was not something I really had like build my career. Let me get where I need to get to.
Yeah.
Make this amount of money. But then like last year I was like, man, like it would be nice to have somebody to share your life with. You know what I mean? But I guess I'm looking forward to some elements of marriage, and I'm trying to hang out more with married people because I want to ask them questions.
Yeah.
It's like I think there is this perpetuation of marriage in society. Like you find the one and life gets in, it's like, okay, but like, can I just get the real? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are there going to be days when I don't like him? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just getting that understanding. So it's something I look forward to, but like, I don't know that it's like something I would want this year, but it's like eventually. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, like marriage sounds kind of scary to me. But for me, we've talked about this before on the podcast, but like it just feels like a next step in life that makes me feel older. And I never want to feel older. And that's like the only reason it scares me. But if I were married to Dan, it'd be like, yeah, so what? But it just feels like the actual step of that makes me feel like I've gone forward in my life and I've like lost that time now or something like that. I have a weird psychological thing going on.
So do you associate marriage like older people? Like, oh, you're old, so therefore.
It just feels like, yeah, like you've moved on to a next step that you can't get back, maybe. I don't know. That's the scary part. Whereas for me, like, as of this point, it feels weird to say this in front of people, but like, yeah, I could see that being the next step, but it's just a scary, I don't know. I think it's also just like, oh my God, weddings sound scary to plan. And like, yeah. And a lot of times I'm just like, well, that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of times I just wish we could like sign the paper and then maybe host a party at some point.
What did you guys do?
We just went to a courthouse and just in front of the judge, like had him do that. And we were planning on having a wedding at some point.
Oh, really?
We're actually planning on it for, I think we were thinking like fall 2020. That's what we were aiming for.
Oh no!
But of course, like we got married March of 2019, and then started here, moved here in like November, and then the pandemic happened, and so all of that money that we had saved up for like having a cool wedding, we put into this house for the down payment. So which made a lot more sense during the pandemic.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of with you on that. Like, I think the wedding versus the marriage, because I feel like wedding and marriage are two different things. And sometimes we like look to the wedding and it's like, oh, I'm stuck with this person now. It's like, and not, I feel like I want to get to a space where it doesn't feel like I'm stuck with you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I get to do life with you, but it's.
And maybe it's that scariness of like, I hope nothing changes once marriage happens too. I feel like that can be kind of like just a scary word of like, oh, now you're my husband versus like boyfriend, but yeah, you just hope nothing changes. I feel like that could be scary to some people. Cause yeah, like I don't know, like the movies are always like, oh, they're married now, like now there's no more fun, and I don't know. I feel like the movies sometimes portray it probably like realistically. If you've been with someone for a really long time, yeah, the relationship changes over time. But
well, and you can also like whatever you want your relationship to focus on, as long as you're clear about that and bringing it up regularly, like you're going to have that focus. So if you want to remain youthful, then that can be, let's keep having adventures. Let's keep having fun. Like
I'm gonna start writing a list of things that will keep me youthful. I feel then I can get married.
I feel like you live in the Midwest. Like if you got married, it's like, oh, she's young. Because in the Midwest, like everyone out here gets married at like 19, 20.
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? You
That's
know what you think?
It blew me away because coming from Chicago, it's like which is also in the Midwest, but they definitely have like a different approach to marriage. Like in Chicago, I felt like most people were getting married like in their 30s somewhere. Whereas I came here and it's like people my age have kids with their spouse already. And it's just a different like pace here for that life change. And I'm guessing
I've never thought
I'm guessing LA is closer to Chicago's.
Yeah. Like, 30, 35 is like, okay, you figured it out. You know who you are. But yeah, I moved here and it's like, you're married, you're 22. Like,
yeah,
you have a kid, you're 24. Like, what?
Yeah.
And I think it's a Midwest thing. I think I think the environment in the Midwest gives that conducivity of like, oh, low cost of living. Of course I can start a family. And it's like, oh no.
It could be. I'm wondering if it's like there's a lot of like high school relationships that pan out here. I feel like, I don't know if it's because of the more closeness, smaller, like less big city type of always seeing new people, always having different things to go to where you meet new people. It's like, I think sometimes people are like, okay, I need to latch onto this person and like get married. But I don't know if that's it, because I've never thought this. I've lived here my whole life though, whereas you two are coming into this. So I think it's something I've never heard before about
you see
the
good
Midwest.
You see someone good looking, like, oh, they look good, and then they're married.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, and you're like, okay, you know what I mean?
Dang, yeah.
How long have you been married? And it's like, oh, I've been married for like 8 years. I'm like, so you got married at 19? Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Jeez,
you have this resume of marriage experience and you're still in your 20s. And I'm like, okay,
yeah,
you were pretty young.
I do have a lot of like Facebook friends, not people I'm actually like close with. But yeah, I see like a ton of people getting married and having kids all the time. But then I feel like a lot of my actual friends are not married at all. Like I don't attend many weddings because a lot of my friends aren't getting married. And so I wonder if you start to group yourself with those types of people too. Because also my parents were older parents and they got married. I don't know. Actually, they got married at how old I am today. But then they waited a long time to have kids. And then same with their parents. So I also kind of wonder if it's like how you grew up too. So I don't know.
Yeah. I'm liking the call out of like the friends you hang out with, because it's such a like when life happens, there's like this weirdness that goes with it. And I'm in this season where my friends are getting married or they're getting engaged, and it just feels weird. You know what I mean? Because it's like one of my friends had a baby like 2 weeks ago, and it's like, oh, I remember when I met you when you were single, and like, you know what I mean? There's just like in life, you think about life, and it's like we're in that season in like mid to late 20s where it's like, oh, friends are getting married, and it's like,
do you feel like that creates like kind of like a distance, like an emotional distance?
A little bit. I don't think I can relate with her as much anymore, and I also just feel like for me, it's not that I don't want to relate with her anymore. It's just like, oh, I don't want to bother you because you have a kid, so I'm just gonna go hang out with my friends that don't have kids. Even though they're married, I'm gonna go hang out with them because...
And they're probably desperate to hang out with adults.
Yeah, they don't have kids, but she has a kid, and I'm like, I'm just gonna leave you with your kid and just hang out with other people. So there has been a distance, but I don't think it's been intentional. It's just been like, I don't know if I'm the only one that thinks this way, but I feel like when my friends start having kids, I'm like, okay, so you made a human. You gotta make sure that human survives. So I'm just gonna let you do that, and let me just go try to survive because I'm barely making it too. You know what I mean?
I was gonna say, I feel like some people I've known that have had kids though, that's like a scary thought of when they have their kid is like, I hope we still have time to hang out with our friends. I hope they still want to hang out with us. I hope the baby doesn't keep us from hanging out with the friends. So
Oops.
I was gonna say, yeah, keep it.
I should reach out. I should reach out and be like, hey, do you wanna grab lunch?
I'm only saying that because like I'm terrified someday to have a kid and then like lose hangout time or friends.
But I hope that for me that it's kind of like in that season, because everyone is getting married, but I hope like it's like in that season where it's like we have kids at the same time. And then it's like the kids can have play dates and hang out with like adults.
That would be fun.
Yeah. I hope all of my friends get pregnant at the same time.
It's like next life goal.
We don't have family here, so the more of a support network we have, the better.
Yeah.
So it actually would be pretty funny if it's like everyone is like, oh, okay, all having kids is like, oh.
Start exchanging like, all right, when are you planning? When are you planning?
Well, was there anything else that you wanted to cover?
No, I wanted to ask you guys. So this podcast thing, I'm just curious. Like, how is it going? How do you choose who you're gonna invite out to these podcasts?
Only
and
our favorite
why not?
people.
I think it's going really well. I've had this conversation privately with a lot of people recently because they found out about the podcast through whomever and then just asked me about it. I think I really enjoy when I'm here in front of the camera recording, whether it's just me and Elisa or when we've got a guest with us. It's a ton of fun for me. Like, I love being in the studio doing the recording. Sorry, in the wardrobe during the recording. The other aspects of it, I have trouble engaging with. Like, Elisa does the editing now, which I think I'm curious to hear how that's going from your perspective. I'm supposed to be working on like figuring out like advertising, like on Facebook and stuff, and I just it's like, well, and I keep forgetting about it, and you know, for whatever reason, I've just got like other things going on in life. But there are plenty of evenings where like I've had an opportunity to like look into it, and it just doesn't like occur to me. So I need to figure out some way to like get it prioritized, like the non-studio stuff, non-wardrobe stuff, because I think I do want to like start those next steps of like promoting the podcast more, especially now that we've got like, I think this is episode 25 or 26 that we're recording right now. Like, that's a big catalog. That's a lot of hours of content. And so if somebody's finding our podcast right now, they've got so much that they can listen to or watch. And I think that's really cool. And we've had so many great guests on and so many interesting conversations. And I think like anybody's going to be able to find something on this show that they are interested in. So I want to get the word out more. I want to get that advertising out. It's more like a personal struggle against myself to actually like get it into like the front of my mind when it's not studio day. So that's how it's going for me.
Yeah, I feel like I mostly enjoy this part, especially when we do have a guest though too, because I just love hearing other people's like opinions and how their mind works, and it's always different than mine. So I love that part. I do enjoy editing. Sometimes it feels kind of like you said, it's kind of like the secondary thing to my life where I'm like, I got to get this done. And I feel like all the time I find like some type of mistake or something I could do better, and like then I'm always like, okay, let's try to remember to change this next time. And then sometimes I look back once it's posted to YouTube or even like the audio, and I'm like, dang it. And so like sometimes I get those little things that like frustrate me because I edited it. But I don't know. I really enjoy the part of talking with someone else. I feel like our podcast has been kind of like, it's kind of like a consistent viewership of like guests and no guests, of like how many people actually view it. And like I need to look at the audio only ones, so like Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music. I think those are the three, because they have a lot of weird like listens in other countries all the time, and I'm just like, why are people listening to us? And I'm always wondering. So like there's a lot of data, like analytics stuff that you can look at that I just haven't dove into either, that I would like to.
What countries like have you seen on the?
I feel like I mostly see European.
Interesting.
But I'd have to look at the map again.
That would be really cool. Can you imagine like you guys go on vacation in Europe and everyone's like, oh my God, could you sign? And you're like,
yeah, we're like
what?
famous in Germany or something.
I'm like, this is so random. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, I
would
wonder,
listen to your podcast, and you're like, oh.
could it just be people's VPNs too? Could they
Yeah,
be
it
set
could
up
be that,
in Europe? But yeah, I don't know where the popular VPN connection is, but
yeah, and I was really thrilled a couple weeks ago. Somebody who I met at a wedding said that they found our podcast organically. So it was just like through the algorithm, it was pushed to them, and that's how they found it. So it wasn't like a link anybody shared with them. And that to me, it was like super thrilling and kind of reignited my desire to like figure out the advertising aspect.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I agree. That was like exciting to hear, because like a lot of people who listen like know us some way or another, or they're interested in the person that like was on.
Yeah.
And so like it is kind of nice to have people who like don't have a connection with any of us listen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this has been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Yes, we never talked about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, but we should. I mentioned them.
That's
lost my train of thought.
It's okay.
In the
I've been
future,
debating myself, like whether I want to really do a deep dive into that or not. So
I think that would be really cool. I would listen to that because I feel like I didn't have the time to watch the entire thing. I just watched like clips, like here and there, like my dog stepped in a bee, and like, you know, he did the face and everything. But just like knowing that there was a verdict, and I think it would be really cool to have a conversation about like domestic violence and like from the male perspective, because I think I'm not gonna lie, when I think of domestic violence, I think of it as imposed on the female.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some of that for me is culture because I come from a patriarchy, but and the other of it is like males are, you know, physically usually more dominant, but it's like with this trial was interesting to see like, oh my God, it's flipped. And it also kind of felt weird because I think, and maybe this is just my take on society, I feel like in society we don't take men's emotions as seriously. Like if you think about like Will Smith, like when he was emotional about like when Jada's sharing about like having that entanglement, like he became a meme, right? When Michael Jordan is crying, when men cry, it's a meme because I don't think we as society know how to handle that. I think individually with men in our lives that we know and love, we know how to handle that because it's like, oh, I care about you. But as a society, I don't think we've been like nurtured to handle that side of male emotions. It's like you're supposed to be strong and so I think it was kind of interesting for me to like when I would watch the clips to see him and to see his reaction whenever he looked at her and just see this like, man, you were just going through it with this chick, you know? Yeah, so I'll look forward to listening to that one day.
Well, thank you, Angela. Thanks for joining us in the wardrobe.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
One day I'll tell you guys where this wardrobe is in Corn City. It's in Corn City, Midwest, United States of America.
All right. Until next time from Corn City.